You've become a mother, yet you are still living on your parents. Don't slack off forever. That's my husband shouting right in front of me. How did things end up like this? This is a story of how I was deceived by my husband and ended up living with my in-laws, suffering greatly until I exacted revenge on those despicable people. My name is Belner. I work at an advertising agency. I got married to a man I had been dating for a year. My husband's name is Weird. I met Weird at a house party. I don't usually participate in house parties and such, but at that time, many people around me started getting married and I was feeling anxious. So, I decided to attend a house party that my colleague invited me to. That's where I met Willard. Willard had a refreshing appearance and could get along with anyone without any barriers. I was never good at interacting with people, and it took me a while to open up to them. I've always been called unsociable, even though I never meant to come across that way. I often had questions like, "Are you angry?" or "Are you in a bad mood?" Even though I didn't intend to, I was perceived as unfriendly. So, I never made an effort to expand my social circle. Even at the house party, I couldn't easily fit in and was thinking of leaving early. Belner, you are really beautiful, you know. You have a sharp and capable aura. It's cool. Willard looked straight at me and said that I wasn't used to being complimented, so I was surprised by Willard's words and felt my face getting hot. Your face is all red. Saying that, he smiled at me, and I was completely captivated. From that moment on, Willard pursued a relationship with me, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. Just recently, we celebrated our wedding anniversary, and we entered our 2nd year of marriage. We both continued working, and our everyday life remained unchanged. Those ordinary days made me happy. On one particular day, both of us had a day off from work, so we decided to go to a nearby cafe. Suddenly, my husband started a serious conversation. Hey, Belner, I have something to talk about. What's the matter all of a sudden? Do you want to live with my parents? Live together? Why all of a sudden? I was taken aback. Honestly, I wasn't keen on the idea. I didn't have a positive image of living together, but Willard continued with a serious face. Actually, I'm seriously considering getting our own home. Willard has always wanted to have his own home someday, but his salary isn't that great, and if things continue like this, I'll be the one bearing most of the burden. So he suggested living with his parents to save some money before it reaches that point. I was left pondering this sudden proposal. I've heard stories from my friends about some having good relationships with their in-laws and others having bad ones. Because I've heard stories of being mistreated as a daughter-in-law, living together seemed like a doubting prospect for me. My parents really think highly of you, Belner, and I believe there are more benefits to living together for our future. He is unusually serious. I didn't realize he had been thinking so seriously about our future. Thinking that way, I couldn't help but feel that I should respect my husband's opinion. In reality, my in-laws have never shown any signs of disapproval, and when I occasionally visited their home, they welcomed me warmly. Surely, in this day and age, there wouldn't be any malicious mistreatment of a daughter-in-law. That's what I thought at the time. So, I accepted my husband's proposal to live together. He repeatedly thanked me, saying thank you. Thinking about being together with my husband, I was determined to work hard for our own home. But reality wasn't as sweet, and I didn't have to wait long to realize that. As soon as the living together plan was settled, preparations began immediately. Within about a month after I accepted the idea, we were already in the process of a smooth move. On the day of our move, my parents-in-law warmly welcomed us. I knew there would be some adjustments, but I believed we could live together with these people. That's what I thought at the time. After the move, I felt exhausted and not well. I had taken time off from work for the move, so I planned to sleep in tomorrow morning. However, I was awakened by my mother-in-law's voice. "How long are you going to sleep? Get up quickly and prepare breakfast." Haha, mother-in-law. Starting today, all the household chores in this house are your responsibility. If you slack off, you'll be in trouble. With those words, my mother-in-law left the room. I checked the clock and realized it was only 5 a.m. I was not feeling well and wanted to rest a bit longer. And did she just say all the household chores? My groggy mind tried to process everything, but I couldn't make sense of it. Since it was only the second day of living together, I couldn't defy my mother-in-law, so I changed my clothes and went downstairs to start preparing breakfast. But I finished it too quickly. Thinking so, I killed time by looking at my smartphone. Then my mother-in-law appeared. "Hey, what are you slacking off for? Hurry up and get ready." She shouted at me with an intimidating tone. "But it's still 6 o'clock. Wouldn't it be too early if I finished the preparations now?" "Stop making excuses. If that's the case, come up with more dishes yourself. Finish it by 7 o'clock. Even though I had already prepared bacon, scrambled eggs, and toast, was it still not enough? Reluctantly, I added one more dish, and I set the breakfast table so that we could start eating by 7 o'clock. However, nobody came at 7 o'clock, and it wasn't until 7:30 that everyone finally gathered. My father-in-law took a sip of soup. "It's under-seasoned. Can't eat this." Haha, but when I lived with Willard, it always tasted like this. Now that you're part of this family, adjust to our taste. My mother-in-law carried her oven and my father-in-law's soup to the kitchen and poured them down the sink. From then on, with every bite of the food I prepared, they complained. The only things they ate without any complaint were the toast and the peanut butter my mother-in-law took out of the pantry. Immediately after breakfast, I went to my husband's room and confronted him. "Hey, what was that this morning? Why didn't Willard say anything?" "It's your fault for upsetting mom and dad, isn't it? We just started living together, so get it together." My husband let out a deep sigh. Why should I be blamed? Honestly, that's what I thought. But since we had just started living together, I could only endure it. And so, the bullying from my in-laws continued, and at some point, my husband joined in berating me. However, one day something happened. It was about 2 months into our cohabitation. I was concerned about my ongoing health issues since moving in, so I went to see a doctor. To my surprise, I found out that I was pregnant. A glimmer of hope shone through the difficult days I had been experiencing. If they found out that I was pregnant, my in-laws and my husband should be happy. They might accept me as a true member of the family. With these thoughts in mind, I returned home. During dinner, I announced that I was pregnant. My mother-in-law, without even looking at me while eating, asked, "What's the gender?" I told her that it was still early and we couldn't know the gender yet. "It's pointless if it's not a boy." The reactions of my in-laws were not what I had expected. I thought that being pregnant and giving birth would make them happy. My common sense was easily shattered. Even after they found out about my pregnancy, the attitude of my in-laws and my husband didn't change. I had expected that they would be considerate of my well-being, avoiding any unnecessary physical strain and sharing the household chores, but instead, I continued to wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast and endure their complaints. Even when I returned from work, I was burdened with all the accumulated household chores. Even when it came to shopping, no matter how heavy the items they asked me to carry, I was always left to handle it alone, without any consideration. However, things were still tolerable at that point. When I reached my 7th month of pregnancy, my mother-in-law said something shocking to me. "We are hosting Thanksgiving this year. Many relatives will be coming, so I expect you to prepare the meal all by yourself, okay?" Just me? What on earth is this person saying? That was my immediate reaction. My belly had already grown quite big, making it difficult to carry out normal daily activities. Preparing meals for the whole extended family alone? It was undoubtedly an arduous task, so I tried to convey that it would be too much for me. However, my mother-in-law turned a deaf ear to my prayers and went ahead with the plan. That day was incredibly challenging. I woke up at 4 a.m. to start preparing, making meals for around 30 relatives all by myself to serve at lunchtime. Occasionally, some relatives offered to help, saying, "Shall I lend a hand?" But my mother-in-law said, "Since you are come to our family, I want you to do it all by yourself." She selfishly spoke those words, driving the relatives out of the kitchen. I hadn't uttered a single word to that effect. In the end, I poured wine, cleaned up, and everything finally settled down when the date changed. As I finished my bath and took a breather in my room, my mother-in-law entered without even knocking. "From now on, we'll host Thanksgiving every year, so it'll be your responsibility. Good luck." Saying that, she left the room. My mother-in-law can't even handle household chores properly, yet she burdens me with everything. My father-in-law and husband turn a blind eye. I reached my breaking point. Someday I will definitely take revenge on this family. That's when I made up my mind. Lately, perhaps because I haven't been competing with them, my in-laws have started complaining more. And a few months later, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. It seems you can be useful occasionally. In front of me, who had just given birth to a child, she said, occasionally useful? Shouldn't she have expressed more words of encouragement? However, at that time, I had already grown cold towards my in-laws and my husband, so I managed to smoothly ignore it without getting annoyed. My parents also came to the hospital and prized me a lot, unlike my in-laws. Feeling that stark difference, I almost burst into tears. If worse comes to worst, I can always go back to my parents' house. With that thought, I naturally felt empowered. Half a year had passed since giving birth to my son and being discharged from the hospital. My son's neck was now stable, and child care was gradually becoming easier. I thought it would be nice to visit my parents' house for the first time in a while and proposed it to my husband. I want to Europe by my parents' house for a bit. Is that okay? If Willard is busy, I can go alone. In reality, I hadn't seen my parents since I gave birth, or should I say they hadn't been allowed to see him. Even after being discharged, my mother-in-law and the others had exploited my maternity leave, leaving me with no free time whatsoever. But the response I received from my husband was unbelievable. Can't you just cut it out? You just want to go back to your parents and depend on them, don't you? What's wrong with wanting my parents to meet our son? Why is that not allowed? When I protested, my husband's attitude turned hostile, and he started shouting at me. You're a mother now, so you can't rely on your parents. Stop being lazy. I absolutely won't allow you to go back to your parents' house. You should quietly focus on household chores. With those words, he stormed off somewhere. It's pointless to say anything to this person anymore, I thought. Resigned, I reluctantly decided to prepare everything by myself. The next morning, my in-laws, seemingly having heard about our conversation from my husband, started with a barrage of snide remarks. What a stupid daughter-in-law, wanting to go back to her parents and rely on them. Even though she became a mother, she doesn't have time to be ready. The two of them berated me together, but I calmly replied without flinching. Yes, you are right. A few days later, my husband was at work and my in-laws went out for lunch together. Make sure you take care of all the household chores. As my mother-in-law casually threw those words before leaving the house, I had no intention of doing any of it, of course. I had secretly prepared my belongings in advance, and with my baby son in a baby carrier, I left my in-laws' house, and I headed straight to my parents' house. Since I hadn't informed my parents in advance, they were very surprised when I suddenly came back. But when my father heard the situation from me, he got angry, and my mother, while crying, gently hugged me and said, You can stay here as long as you want. In that moment, something that had been building up inside me snapped, and everything that had been building up inside me poured out as tears. While I was crying, my parents had been patting my back all along. When things calmed down, My son started crying and we laughed together, saying things like, maybe he's reading the move. Then, after a while, my cell phone rang. It was my mother-in-law calling. Hello? Hey, you haven't finished household chores yet. Where did you go? I won't be coming back anymore, so please rest assured. Well then. With only those words, I hung up the phone. After that, there were several more phone calls, but I ignored them all. Then, a few hours later, a call came to my parents' house. This time, it was my husband calling. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Don't you know what's happening this weekend? Yes, this weekend was Thanksgiving, a day when my relatives would gather. My mother-in-law, who couldn't cook, probably thought that without me, things would be impossible. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice behind my husband saying, Hurry up and come back now. And she sounded desperate. You are my wife, you know. Do as I say. Then let's get a divorce, please. Ignoring my husband's stupid voice, I hung up the phone and stopped answering calls from that point on. A week later, I received a message on my cell phone from my husband's relatives, informing me that the Thanksgiving gathering with relatives had been a disaster. The completion of inedible food as a result of my mother-in-law forcing herself to cook. Some of the relatives, who realized I was not there, confronted my husband and in-laws, leading to the revelation that I had been driven out due to harassment from my in-laws. Furthermore, my in-laws and husband were criticized for their mistreatment, which was identified as the case. In the end, everyone left in the middle of the gathering, and I was subsequently cut off from the family. The relatives gathered together and demanded an apology from me from my husband and in-laws. Thanks to that, my husband and in-laws visited my parents' house to apologize. I'm reflecting on my actions. Please give me another chance. It's impossible, no matter how much you apologize. I want to go back. I firmly declined. We divorced, and I obtained custody of our child. Thanks to the relatives, I was able to smoothly receive child support payments. The ones who had serious issues were only my husband and his parents. The other relatives were all wonderful people. Moreover, when the divorce was finalized and I made a gratitude call, everyone said, "Be happy and take care." I regret being deceived by my terrible husband and in-laws, but I am truly grateful for meeting such kind relatives. My husband and in-laws were abandoned by the relatives, and now they live a retired life without any social connections. On the other hand, I live with my son and parents in my parents' house, enjoying a happy life every day. Someday, I hope to repay the relatives who helped me. With that in mind, I want to cherish the happiness they have given me.